All right, good afternoon or morning or whenever you're watching this. News and notes. It's Tuesday. It is June 10th. Yeah, June 10th. So here we go. Here's our bits of news and notes. A lot of stuff happened on Monday, so we want to get you caught up. A bunch of little things, nothing big. All right, first of all, I guess you consider this big. The hiring of a head coach is pretty big. Dan Danbury, the Hat Tricks, have announced that Nick Neidert is going to be their next head coach. Um, this is kind of a nice little reunion for Neidert, as he was the first player signed by the Danbury Whalers back in 2010, the inaugural year of the FPHL. Played 11 years overall in the FPHL. He's also coached. He has coached in the SPHL, and most recently, I guess that was his most recent gig, the Macon Mayhem in the SPHL. Coached there a couple of years, and he's going to be the guy behind the bench for Danbury, which I think that's going to work better for them than player coaches. I think that having a guy actually on the bench during the game, uh, I think that really benefits a team, especially with making adjustments and whatnot. So, all right. Speaking of new coaches, we found out last Tuesday, after I posted, that Sylvain Cloutier is the head coach for the Baton Rouge Zydeco. They signed their five guys, their core offensive unit. We talked a little bit about it on Thursday on the Flash Audio Network. Having Kuzi and Larwood and Elijah Wilson, Jake Cox, and Scott Schrock back. That's huge for the team. Gives them a lot of continuity from last year to this year. Of course, the Zydeco really made big steps last year, getting into the playoffs after a pretty rough start during their first campaign. Really took them a while to get going. They're going to be working on signing players. They also signed three to PTOs. I need to stop for a second and mention this. Players who are getting signed, everybody, everybody that's getting signed is a PTO. At this point, what that means is that a position is held for them on the roster. They still need to come into camp at the end of September and earn a spot. But at this point, Baton Rouge has their five guys here, their core returnees, and then they signed three guys today. Artyom Starodubtsev, I guess that's how you pronounce it, Russian. Played in Turkey last year, 26 points in 10 games. Um, they also signed Andrei Gerasimov, 14 years of international experience. Turkey, Belarus, um, Kazakhstan. He's played all over the place. Defenseman there. And then forward Ilya Finovich, played the last 3 years in Turkey, 96 points in 41 games. So they're hoping that translates to the Fed. All right. So that's the news for the Zydeco. Carolina, again, something we talked about on the Flash Audio Network. They did reach an affiliation agreement with the Worcester Bulls of the APHL. That's semi-pro, senior A hockey. And I think that that's going to be something that you're going to see more of. Teams from either the APHL or the MIHL, Michigan Independent Hockey League. Both of those senior A leagues, I see more partnerships developing. before we get to September and October, where a team has a loose affiliation agreement. You're in a bind. You need a player called up quick. You call your affiliate and bring them in. So I think that's probably going to be a trend that we see, and I think it's good. I think it's good to kind of work on becoming more of a feeder system. Um, I also think on the other end, it's good for Fed teams to establish relationships with SPHL teams and ECHL teams. And even though there might not be an official affiliation, um, a lot of contacts between coaches and staff person to staff person. So that kind of develops a better pipeline for players to progress in their careers. All right. Um, yeah, it looks like most likely Coach Harrison will be signing an extension. That's not official, but the last thing I heard is looks like he said, "Yeah, I want to come back." So I'm sure they're working on details now. All right, the Blue Ridge Bobcats. They announced that their play-by-play guy, Brett Weisman, you all know him. You've heard him. He is coming back for this next year to do the uh, broadcast, whatever service that's on, plus handle social media and graphic design and things like that. And he also wears other hats too. He works with developing corporate relationships and whatnot. So good to have Wiseman back again for this next year. Now, 3 players signed um, to PTOs for the Bobcats. First, Wes Smith. That's a player that we don't know yet. They're looking for big things from Wes. Played at Cleary University. That's an ACHA school. One of the best ACHA players in the country. Ended up with, in 2 years, 43 goals and 61 assists. So they think he has a world of talent, and they're looking for him to make big contributions. Along with, they did sign Kyle Heitzner, who they traded for with Monroe, and Danny Martin has already announced he's back, or he's coming back as the captain of the team. So there we go with the Bobcats news. Now, we mentioned head coaches up here. This, I think, is just a good common sense move because the Prowlers have been working with this arrangement for a while now, for well over a season. And it's just good that there's finally an official title. Chris Paulin is now going to be not just an assistant coach, he is going to be the associate head coach. As you know, the head coach is Matt Graham, who is also the GM. He's out there playing. Alex Johnson, assistant coach, he's out on the ice playing. So this is, I think, a very good move. You have someone who is designated now as, yeah, standing behind the bench, watching everything. Um, Obviously, there's a different perspective when you're standing on the bench compared to if you're on the ice. Matt Graham's going to see some things. Chris Pollin's going to see some things, and sometimes they're going to see two different things. So when they go into the locker room in between periods, they can kind of compare notes, make proper adjustments. I think this makes the team better, just having Paul in there in a full time role now, associate head coach. So, that again, I think that just makes sense. I think that's a very positive move for the Prowlers. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Ice Cats because they have been making quite a bit of news lately. First of all, They will have a press conference this upcoming Monday. They haven't announced the time yet, but they will be announcing that later this week. They will be announcing their new head coach. They have a head coach hired. They just haven't announced who that is yet. And they also are going to introduce everyone to key members that are part of the staff of the club. People who are working in the front office. And this is something that last year the HC Venom didn't have. They didn't have really much of a front office. They had like two people doing all the work. And so a lot of things kind of fell through the cracks. There's going to be a full staff for the Pee Dee Ice Cats. So that's going to benefit them, help them run much smoother. I think that's going to translate to a better product on the ice as well. Now, they did have a couple trades last week. First of all, this is the big trade, I think, was with Monroe, and they acquired Rico Gonzalez, Rico Suave, uh, from the Monroe Moccasins. Of course, Gonzalez was with the Rockers last year. In the dispersal draft, he was selected by Monroe, but there was a deal. And the Pee Dee Ice Cats have traded back Rasmus Asp to Monroe. Asp became a fan favorite very quickly in Monroe. So when the news was announced of this trade, I saw all the Monroe boards, everybody go, yes, Asp is back. Meanwhile, the Pee Dee Ice Cats get something that they desperately need, a top-notch goalie. And Rico is just that. Obviously played on a team that didn't have the best defensive group, gave up a lot of shots, a lot of goals, and he stopped a lot of shots. Yeah, Gonzalez is a big addition to the Pee Dee Ice Cats. Ice Cats also traded to Indiana Marian Pazitka. I have it written down here. Yeah, Pazitka. It was also Lester Brown and Ricard Zielinski's. Um, so those three are now going to be property of Indiana. Helps build up their roster a little bit as they get ready to prepare for the upcoming season. And what those future considerations are, I don't know. I have a feeling, I just have a hunch that if there are those 4-game PTO contracts again this upcoming year, that hasn't been finalized as far as whether there is or isn't going to be. But if there is, I have a feeling that that is what your return is a couple of PTO contracts. So we'll see. Watertown, they close out the list. They signed 4 players to PTOs. Thomas McGrath, 3 years in the juniors, and tough customer, 186 penalty minutes. They signed Yefim Mishkin, 4 years in the VHL, which is the second highest tier in Russia, just below the KHL. It's like their version of the AHL, but only in Russia. And then they had defenseman Matvey Pimanov, I guess. 2 years in Turkey. 37 games played, 50 points. And then Yegor Filipov, forward. He's played in the VHL and in Turkey. 20 games played this last 2 years, and 27 points, excuse me. This is a tough part of the year where you're learning the pronunciation of all these names, and I'm sitting there fumbling with them. So once the season gets underway and we get to actually watch these players play, we'll get the pronunciations right and we'll get more comfortable with them. So that's our news for the day. A little bit from several teams. This is pretty much what's it's going to be like this summer. Little dribs and drabs of information coming in. Um, Big news next week when we do news and notes is we'll talk about the head coach of Pee Dee. All right, that is it. I thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this and that it's been informative. And make sure you're hitting like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Make sure you're following me on Facebook and on the Flash Audio Network as well. Tomorrow on Hockey 101, we're going to be talking about the officials that are on the ice. What are their roles? What do they do? Why do two guys have an orange band? Why do two not? We'll talk about that. So join me then. Again, this is kind of a hockey for beginners or newer fans. And we just want to kind of cover some of the basics, help you get a little more acclimated to the game. All right, I'm Gary Ryan for the Feather League Flash. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.